On the 8th of December 2022, the central government suspended the Maulana Azad National Fellowship. A fellowship that was like a lifeline for many minority students who dared to pursue higher education in India.
अब अगर स्कॉलरशिप नहीं रहेगा तो फिर मुझे और भी अल्टरनेटिव देखने पड़ेंगे, पैसे कहाँ से आए?
पापा रिटायर हो चुके हैं, इनकम का कोई सोर्स घर पर नहीं है। ये स्कॉलरशिप थी तो मैंने डिसाइड किया था कि मैं रिसर्च करूंगा, पीएचडी करूंगा। ये स्कॉलरशिप खत्म हो गई है तो अब मुझे इसे एक सीरियस रीथिंक की जरूरत है और मुझे लगता है कि मैं कंटिन्यू नहीं करूंगा।
मुस्लिम विमेन का ऐसे इन जनरली पॉपुलेशन बहुत कम है क्योंकि हम लोग एज अ वुमन बहुत सारे बैरियर्स क्रॉस करके हम लोगों का स्कॉलरशिप्स स्क्रैप कर देना, हम लोगों से ले लेना हम लोग के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा ऑब्स्टिकल क्रिएट कर देता है हम लोग के फ्यूचर और हायर स्टडीज़ के लिए।
Union Minister for Minority Affairs Smriti Irani reasoned in the Lok Sabha that the fellowship overlapped with other schemes. She did not, however, go into the what or the how of this overlap.
The decision ignited a storm of criticism, and students have since been protesting across university campuses, demanding its restoration.
Students' organizations across the country have condemned the central government's decision to discontinue the fellowship and decided to call for protest.
यहाँ पे पढ़ाई के लिए पैसा नहीं होता इस दिल्ली जैसे शहर में बच्चा कैसे रहेगा बिना इन फेलोशिप के लिए?
मंडल जिंदा, जिंदा है। सावित्री जिंदा, जिंदा है। फातिमा जिंदा, जिंदा है।
Let's first talk about what this fellowship is and why it was introduced.
Named after India's first education minister, the UPA government launched the Maulana Azad National Fellowship or MANF in 2009. It offers 5-year fellowships to students from these 6 notified minority communities to pursue MPhil and PhD degrees. There are around 1,000 scholarships available every year under this scheme, and its eligibility criteria involves both merit and need. It is awarded only to those minority students who have cleared either UGC NET or joint CSIR UGC test and have an annual income not exceeding Rs 6 lakh per annum from all sources.
You know why MANF was introduced in the first place? MANF was recommended by the Sachar Committee.
Set up in 2005 to study the socio-economic conditions of Muslims in India, the Sachar Committee report revealed that the Muslim community was doing terribly on all socio-economic indicators, including higher education.
The educational gap between Muslims and other communities was so high that the committee recommended and the government accepted affirmative action.
The latest All India Survey of Higher Education, which is a study conducted by the Education Ministry in India, the enrollment ratio of Muslims in higher education continues to stagnate at 4.6%. This is a community that comprises more than 14% of India's population. 14% of the population, but in composition of higher education, only 4.6% of all students are Muslim. That's a representation even lower than that of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. In fact, Muslims have the lowest gross enrollment ratio in higher education, while other minority groups aren't doing too well either. MANF was introduced to address this educational gap that still very much requires our attention.
So if the need still exists, then what are the grounds of discontinuation? The government says overlap.
It says that these minority communities are eligible for this general fellowship and these special fellowships, and therefore there's an overlap amongst these schemes. Now, it is possible that a scholar may be eligible for multiple scholarships. For example, a minority OBC student may apply for both a minority fellowship and a national OBC fellowship. But the fact is that there is only one organization managing these fellowships under a centralized portal, which is the UGC. And a scholar can, at any one point of time, avail only one fellowship. And so the possibility of an overlap, in all likelihood, doesn't exist.
Students who availed of fellowship for a certain period, they have to return the money to the university. and this amount in some cases is more than 80,000, 90,000. My own students, she actually returned 80,000 to the university because earlier she was dependent on the university's fellowship, but after getting JRF, she has to return because she claimed for the JRF. So it is very clear that one student cannot avail of two fellowships simultaneously. Then the question of overlap doesn't come.
And let's say, even if there is some irregularity or margin of error that is causing some overlap, then why not correct those anomalies instead of scrapping the fellowship altogether?
अगर आप ओवरलैपिंग कर रहे हैं तो इसका मतलब तो यह है कि ये आपकी अकाउंटिंग की गलती है, आपके सिस्टम की गलती है। एक ही आदमी को एक ही काम के लिए दो जगह से अगर कोई चीज़ मिल रही है तो देयर इज समथिंग रॉन्ग इन योर सिस्टम।
Why the issue is raised for Maulana Azad fellowship that it is causing overlap? Why it is not with other fellowship?
The government just slashed the Ministry of Minority Affairs budget by almost 40%.
Also not spending the allocated budget also. The question depends upon the government. They will allocate the budget, but they don't spend it. When they don't spend it, the next year the budget will be cut.
Muslims and other religious minorities in India have been lagging in several development indicators, including educational attainment, gender equality and workforce participation. इसके बावजूद भी आप 38% हमारा बजट कम कर देते हैं।
Sir, how can you say that this is an inclusive budget? You are the people of exclusion. Exclude minorities, you exclude farmers.
Sir, there is total neglect towards minority communities. I request Honorable Minister to increase the amount allocated for minorities.
MANF is not the only minority scholarship slashed in the recent past.
A mere month before, the government abruptly cancelled the pre-matric scholarship scheme for minority students of classes 1 to 8. Previously covering classes 1 to 10, the scholarship is now restricted to only classes 9 and 10. The government has also discontinued the Padho Pardesh interest subsidy scheme, which offered students from minority groups interest subsidies on education loans for overseas studies. As for MANF, the UGC has been regularly skipping annual calls for applications before it was taken off the charts altogether.
The decision to discontinue the Maulana Azad National Fellowship infringes on the rights of minority communities in India, of which Muslims bear the brunt.
Former UGC chairman Sukhdev Thorat says low-income Muslims are least likely to opt for higher education. What you're essentially doing by scrapping scholarships like MANF is that you're making higher education inaccessible to already underrepresented minorities.
And how are minority groups expected to compete equally with others for general fellowships or even special fellowships when, say, for example, a Muslim OBC is significantly more deprived than a non-Muslim OBC?
The Sabka Committee report states that the abysmally low representation of Muslim OBCs suggests that the benefits of entitlements meant for the backward classes are yet to reach them.
Discontinuation of fellowships like MANF is like closing the door of higher education in the faces of those communities whose only hope of overcoming marginalization was that same education.